the biggest developing story in the tourism sector, in fact, and could be the first test case against a major short-term insurance company. About 500 businesses will take on Santam in what has been deemed the first test case relating to unpaid insurance claims. Insurance Claims Africa, which represents about 700 tourism companies affected by the lockdown, says only a third of its clients insured for business interruption qualify for financial relief. Let's unpack the story now. We're joined by the CEO, Ryan Woolley. Ryan, good morning. Thanks very much for your time. You know, we've had this discussion several times on our show about this issue of business interruption insurance. What are some of the reasons that your clients are being given for their claims being denied?
Well, our clients took out very specific bespoke products that covered them for business interruption for notifiable infectious and contagious disease. And that means that if there was an outbreak, pandemic like we're experiencing, they would then be able to access business interruption cover, which would allow them to fund their businesses and survive. So like the lockdown that we've experienced, these policies are there to cover notifiable disease, which contemplates that it's going to be at the extreme end of infectious and contagious, so that it has to be reported to government and that there's going to be quarantines and responses and the like. But these insurers are turning around and saying, no, the government action is a completely separate intervening cause. Well, we don't buy that. I mean, if you wish away COVID, you don't still have a government lockdown. Yeah. So that just doesn't make any sense to us whatsoever. The other reason is that they're saying the disease must be local. It must start in the area that of the 50k radius that they have. Well, that also doesn't make any sense. This is a pandemic. This is an epidemic. It's spread from every 50-kilometer area into one another. It's like an oil spill that moves across, the ocean onto your beach. It can happen 100 k's away. Wuhan in China. So this just, these two reasons we just feel are, again, it's just excuses being put up to try and avoid liability.
Yeah. So, and this is not an issue that's unique to South Africa either. Companies around the world dealing with insurance claims being rejected for all manner of reasons. But tell us about this decision, this judgment in the UK that might actually bode well for your case against Santam.
So there's a test case in the UK that's been running for since, I think, June, July. It was put in quite early by the UK's conduct authority. And it is imminent. We should, by mid-September, hear what the result of that test case is. The wordings in that test case are slightly different to ours. I think there's one that's similar. And also that test case, the quarantine situation in a first world country in the UK is a little bit different to what we experienced here, with the government's response being a lot more impactful. So because of the nature and uncertainty around the disease. So I think that, yes, there are some similarities that we can draw. I think that we are more focused on our case that we're running against Santam, which starts on the 1st of September. These insurers have been asking for legal certainty. We've had one case, the Cafe Chameleon case, which was awarded in the favor of the plaintiff against guard risk. So this will now be the second case, which is Mar Africa Hotels against Santam, and we hope that justice will prevail. So
Santam has a relief grant, which we understand is capped at 1.5 million rand per client, but there are conditions to companies qualifying for that, including they have to prove that they've lost a certain amount of months of income under the lockdown.
So we've got to understand the context around these relief payments. We've led a very vocal campaign around, how these insurers have been treating their customers. And with the break of the Cafe Chameleon case, the FSCA, the regulator of these insurers, came out and said, you must pay these claims. These insurers then ran back to the FSCA and the Prudential Authority and effectively negotiated some terms and said, listen, we know, and the FSCA came out and said, you're bringing the industry into disrepute, you're creating trust issues, your conduct is not what we expected. So from that, they decided that in order to get legal certainty, because a lot of these insurers said they need to bring their reinsurers to the party, and those reinsurers weren't going to listen to the FSCA, as I understand it. So with that in mind, the FSCA negotiated with these insurers that they will come out and they'll either offer relief payments, interim relief payments, or they will offer settlements. We've seen some offer settlements. We've seen Santam come out, and you mentioned that they've offered $1.5 million. Well, when we were trying to access the $1.5 million, we were told, no, you only get $1.3 million if you're a VAT vendor. And then they said, we're not going to pay for customers that haven't been able to, pay their premiums. They couldn't afford to still be a customer of Santam, so they didn't qualify for the cover. We had to go cap in hand, to an appeals committee to go and ask again, for these funds to be released. Yeah. It's just, for us, it's just another, Santam fail in terms of, their promise to their customers.
And I suppose, that is what we will also reflect on once we are over the worst of the pandemic. We'll reflect on how companies, and that includes insurance companies, have treated ordinary people who have just tried to keep their businesses afloat. Just tell us, Ryan, in terms of the number of clients that you will be representing when you go to court on the 1st of September, 500 or 600, but what are they telling you about what the past few months has been like for them without an income, without insurance?
So we're now at 700 clients. Only about 200 of those clients received relief, which represented about 10% of their, 10-15% of what they actually do. So, when you think about the pandemic having hit on in early March, lockdown having hit, on the 27th of March, a lot of these businesses haven't earned a cent of income, for 4 or 5 months. How can a business survive? And yesterday I had 2 clients phone me and ask, can we assist with business rescue? The impact of, it's impossible not to consider what could have happened had these insurers just honored their contracts, paid them monthly, or even offered these relief payments earlier on, just to give them a bit more breathing room to survive. These clients employ communities of people.
These insurers, they are themselves insured against this kind of claim.
So we don't have any access to those reinsurance contracts. Our contract our client's contract is directly with the insurer. Yeah. What they've got behind, we expect, would be a reinsurance program, which would then reinsure a portion of these losses. So, if I had to speculate, I'd probably say that these relief payments, are probably the amount that they believe that they are due as a deductible or an excess against their policy, their reinsurance program. And it's now about getting legal certainty to make these reinsurers, come to the party. But if the reinsurers don't come to the party, companies like Santam have said, we've got the balance sheet to pay these claims.
Ryan, Woolley, thanks very much for your time. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but Ryan is the CEO of Insurance Claims Africa. It's a big, big case going to court. It's a test case going to court on September 1st, and a big developing story in the tourism sector in particular, those tourism claims being rejected, some 700 companies just being represented by this one insurance company.